There are some stories so synonymous with cinema that maybe we forget that they were at one time literature. And I think that this is especially true of short stories, which may get the shortest end of the stick of all forms of literature. I think that poetry does not get anywhere near the respect that it does, or does not get anywhere near the play that it deserves, but I think it still gets the respect that it deserves. However, short stories are, in my opinion, very much underrepresented in the daily readings of people. You ask people what was the last book they read, maybe they know it. You ask someone their favorite poem, probably they can at least mention one. But if you ask someone what their favorite short story is, probably they have no idea. But that is what we're here for today. We're here for The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. This is going to be the first in an 8-part series as we journey through this short story, and I believe that roughly this short story is 70 paragraphs long. So what I want to do is I want to take this 10 paragraphs at a time. So this will be for the first 10 paragraphs of the story. It is a cantankerous way to break up the story. I understand that. I know that. But it's what I'm doing. So hopefully you will be here for that. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Irving Ford, and we are here for the first in an 8-part series. It will be a 7-part read-along series, and then we will have a review for the short story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. This video will have 3 different parts: a So What Happened recap of the story, a literary criticism section where we talk about the literary goings-on in the story, and finally a writer's corner where we talk about some of the things that we can take from this story as writers ourselves. So, what happened? We open with a description of the area, which is particularly serene, so serene perhaps that it will lull you into complacency. We're told that the town of Sleepy Hollow is mainly Dutch in lineage. This is a reminder that this short story comes from a time where terms that we throw around today, like white, didn't really mean anything. Because were you Dutch white? Were you German white? Were you British white? Were you German? What kind of white? Were you French white? What did that mean? Today, we kind of just think of white as a certain one thing. And we're told that everyone pretty much accepts that it is Sleepy Hollow haunted. Haunted in this way or that. There are plenty of ghosts running around Sleepy Hollow, but the one haunt that they all argue does affect the area is a Hessian commander-in-chief on horseback. Again, another different sort of another person being referred to by a previous culture. Not from where they are, but from where they might be from. Just an interesting thing to think about in this time, because we will talk about the time period as well. But with that, so, pardon me, I shouldn't have gotten off track. Everyone agrees that this place, Sleepy Hollow, is haunted by plenty of ghosts, but the one that they all agree on is a Hessian commander-in-chief on horseback, without a head. Cannonball, don't you know? Revolutionary War, don't you know? They believe his corporeal remains to be buried at the church. That is why he is haunting the area. Then we are introduced to Ichabod Crane. He showed up around 1790. This is an era of American history that is very interesting in that we don't think about it a lot. You think about the Revolutionary War, you think about the Civil War, you think about the Industrial Revolution, you think about World War I, you think about World War II, you think about the 60s. You don't think about the 1790s all that much. But he showed up, Ichabod Crane, in order to be a teacher. Also, he's from Connecticut. Gross. He is described as tall and without much fancy for fashion, and he runs his school with individually appropriate portions of discipline. What we can make of that, I think we will understand more probably as the story goes on. So, getting into the literature of this, though we've already talked about a couple of things that are interesting, we open the short story with an excerpt from The Castle of Indolence by James Thompson. So I have not read that, but I did get a summary of that from Google. The Castle of Indolence is an allegorical poem written in Spenserian stanzas that depicts a luxurious castle ruled by the Wizard of Indolence, which lures weary travelers to a state of blissful but ultimately harmful torpor. In the first canto, the poem describes the allure of the castle and its effects on the unfortunate inmates. The second canto then details the castle's conquest by the Knight of Arts and Industry. Very interesting pairing. Who vanquishes the wizard and frees the inhabitants from their lethargy. Lethargy being the operative word here. Do we have similar themes between the quoted text that opens our story and a story, which sort of talks down lethargy, talks down slothful behavior, all of the sort. The second thing I want to talk about is Tarrytown. It is in the first. Here's the opening paragraph here. In the bosom of one of those spacious coves which indent the eastern shore of the Hudson, at that broad expansion of the river denominated by the ancient Dutch navigators the Tappan Zee, and where they always prudently shortened sail and implored the protection of St. Nicholas when they crossed, there lies a small market town or rural port, which by some is called Greensburg, but which is more generally and properly known by the name of Tarrytown. This name was given, we are told, in former days by the good housewives of the adjacent country from the inveterate propensity of their husbands to linger about the village tavern or market or on market days. Be that as it may, I do not vouch for the fact, but merely advert to it for the sake of being precise and authentic. Not far from this village, perhaps about 2 miles, there is a little valley, or rather lap of land among high hills, which is one of the quietest places in the whole world. A small brook glides through it, with just murmur enough to lull one to repose, and the occasional whistle of a quail or tapping of a woodpecker is almost the only sound that ever breaks upon the uniform tranquility. So we are told about Tarrytown, and then we are told about Sleepy Hollow. And we have to ask whether or not this tale, too, is a warning against sloth, a warning against idle hands, a warning against restful behavior. And we have maybe a little bit of context for that. Again, there is a big point made of the fact that this is a Dutch area. And assuming that the area is being noted as Dutch for a reason, we have to ask what that reason would be. What would it matter if these settlers were Dutch? Well, the Dutch were known for basically 3 things, and one of them that I left out was painting. They were known for painting, they were known for their art, but they were also known for science and industriousness. So, if we are noting this area as Dutch, and then we are talking about how sleepy the area is, how much and how often these people tarry, are we being told these things to note the fact that, if we assume the nature of the Dutch is to be industrious, is to be scientifically inquisitive, if we are to accept, and trade, they were known for trade as well. So if we are to accept, but that's industriousness really, if we are to accept that industriousness and science is the nature of the Dutch, but here those people are being lazy, is this story also, or is this story uniquely, an argument against people being opposite or out of tune with their own nature? Now, how much can we really read into this? It's interesting. I don't know, but I think that these assumptions about a culture were more prevalent in prior times. So if you go back to when this short story was published, and you were to tell people that this was a short story about a Dutch city, they would have thought all of these things to be true about it, that they were industrious people, that they were hardworking people, that they were scientifically curious people, that they had some form of art there, and then you told them that it was just a lazy town. There would be something to question about that. And then we have this paragraph as well. I believe it's about 4 paragraphs in, but I don't remember exactly. I mention this peaceful spot with all possible laud, for it is in such little retired Dutch valleys, found here, there embosomed in the great state of New York, that population, manners, and customs remained fixed, while the great torrent of migration and improvement, which is making such incessant changes in other parts of this restless country, sweeps by them unobserved. So here we have again telling us that it's a Dutch place, and then telling us that the changes, the technologies of the age were sweeping past them unobserved. Now, it is lauded at this point in time, which kind of goes in opposite with what I am proposing would be the reason that being Dutch would be notable. So, well, I'll just finish this real quick. They are like those little nooks of still water, which border a rapid stream, where we may see the straw and bubble riding quietly at anchor or slowly revolving in their mimic harbor, undisturbed by the rush of the passing current. Saying that this city, this little town, is undisturbed by all of the rushing going on around it. Though many years have elapsed since I trod the drowsy shades of Sleepy Hollow, yet I question whether I should not still find the same trees and the same families vegetating in its sheltered bosom. Now, this is an interesting juxtaposition in a way, because we are being talked to by our narrator and told, oh, it's so pleasant that these people do not change with the changing times. That they are, maybe you would call it backwards, maybe you would call it Luddite, maybe you would call it old-fashioned. But they are not going with the flow of technology, with the flow of time. It's a strange juxtaposition because we are being told, again, like I said earlier, that these people were Dutch. That means they're industrious. And then we're being told, but this place is very sleepy, which means, are they going against their nature? But then, that going against the nature is being celebrated by our narrator. So I think we will get to that in time, but it is an interesting dynamic this early in the text. Now let's talk about names. Ichabod. Ichabod means no glory, or perhaps where is the glory, depending on your interpretation. This comes from Hebrew texts, and that dichotomy, depending on your interpretation, is very, very interesting. To say that there is no glory, or to ask, where is the glory? So, just something to chew on during the rest of this story. Crane can mean crown, depending on the translation from where you're getting the word or the name crane, or it could be a reference to the bird. It could mean the bird crane, that is where you got your last name, which a crane symbolizes often loyalty and good fortune. It is also apparently, in slang terms, used to refer to a tall or slender man, one who resembles a crane. So, maybe that is the only comment being made by calling him Ichabod Crane. Now on to the Writer's Corner portion of this video. There are a couple notes here that are interesting. This is very conversational writing. It is a little bit wordy, sure. The diction is a little bit strained for our time, but probably it was not when it was written. But the flow of this text is extremely good. You can pick out any paragraph in this text and just start reading it out loud. And so long as you're giving yourself time to read, it goes very smooth. And that is a trick from writers that cannot be undersold or oversold. It is so profitable to your reader if you can make a text that does not hang them up every couple of sentences because you have so many clauses, or because you have so many strange words, or because you have presented the images out of sync with the actions, so that you have to keep jumping back and forth between the image and the action. All of these. So one writer who doesn't get enough credit for how well he does this is Stephen King. I've read Stephen King's last 2 books, or 2 of the last 3. I didn't read the one that came out this last year or whatever. And they are, Fairy Tale and Holly. Couldn't stand either of those books. Hated them. They were boring. They were trite. They were just ham-fisted, in my opinion. In my opinion, the actual literature there was nothing redeeming about it. But it was very easy to read, because Stephen King did not hang you up on things. He does not make sentences that are too difficult to get through. He holds your hand and gets you through the story. And then the second Writer's Corner note worth taking from this: there is an overwhelming theme of sleepiness in these first 10 paragraphs. And that is notable for the fact that this is a horror story. So what the writer is doing here, both with that conversational presentation, as well as, this was a sleepy town, and they don't go along with the flow of technology. They just stay in their own little ways, and everything is misty, and everything is kind of dark. Don't you want to take a nap? It's a very sneaky way to lull you to sleep before the impending horror comes to town. So, those are the first 10 paragraphs in this short story. The next video will be on the next 10 paragraphs in this short story. This is part of Classic Haunts for October. 31, at least, videos dedicated to the theme of horror leading up to October 31st, Halloween 2025. So, if you are not subscribed, consider subscribing to stick around for horror fiction the rest of the month. There is poetry every Monday, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.